keep in mind that when you're playing Crown and Skull at your table, while it's important to honor the game as written, it's also important for you as a GM to deliver the experience that you and your players need. And it's okay to be loosey-goosey, right? What's good, everybody? It's your boy Tanner, aka PaladinProse. I am here in the dystopically hot Tokyo, Japan, with my bookshelf of social proof and Snot the Goblin. And today, I am bringing you episode 2 of my epic Crown and Skull campaign report. Now, if you haven't watched episodes 0 and 1, I highly recommend that you go back and do that before you watch this episode, because in these previous episodes of the campaign reports, we break down what is Crown and Skull, how does Crown and Skull work, who is the party, the Garish Gang, and what are they doing. So, we are picking up on the beginning of session 2 right here. Now, if you're still with me and you're digging this content, you're digging Crown and Skull, and you want to see more, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. Please leave a comment down below. I respond to all of your guys' comments, and I love chatting with you guys, and I love sharing this creative whirlwind that we are in right now. Okay, so we've established in session 1, right? The party meets up in Rivergate, and their ultimate mission is to save Penelope from the clutches of her boring, stinking, rich family and send her on a life of adventure with the Garish Gang. We have our two frogkin, Burrow and Gilliman. They are here not only to warn the masses of the impending invasion from the great Toad King Krokokame, but to also learn the ways of firearms here in the eastern world of the North Holds. And that sets the stage for session 1. Now, in session 1, we learn that Royce is being pursued by Penelope's family, and that is the impetus that crosses the paths and brings the party together. It was an epic session. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of laughs. It was a lot of dice rolling. It was a lot of timers. It was a lot of phases. Attrition was taken, skills were rolled, and we all had a blast. We ended off session 1 right after the party's boat slams into the rocks here in the river and goes tumbling onto the riverside. The party wakes up, and we see Penelope's father has been peppered with froggish arrows, and he lays dead on the riverside. Now, we pick up at the beginning of episode 2 of our campaign. Gilliman has bonked his head on a rock and he is KO'd. And the reason why is because my player Peter, who plays Gilliman, is on vacation right now. And so he can't be here for the next few sessions. So narratively speaking, at least for this session, I say that when they tumbled off the boat, he bonked his head on a rock, he's KO'd, he's knocked out for the whole session. My players get it, we move on. Now, as everybody else wakes up, they realize that Penelope's father has been peppered with arrows and is dead on the riverside here. Penelope is knocked over, she's upside down in this palanquin, and at this point, she's met Remy, this rat that Arlen, my other player who's not around anymore, basically randomly summoned on the streets of Rivergate and pursued this palanquin. Now, we determined that Remy, the rat, hopped into this palanquin and basically has decided to stick with Penelope. Now, my fiance, who plays Penelope, loves animals and she loves pets, and I knew that she would jump on this opportunity. So because of the narrative implications, I basically allowed Penelope to use Remy now as a companion. And she used hero points to customize her own companion, and we've determined that Remy, just like Ratatouille, can forage for herbs and stuff and cook. It's ridiculous, but these are skills that your animal companions can have, or other companions can have, and this is all kosher in the book. When the full book releases, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is all organic dice rolls, and that's why I let it happen at the table, because it just makes sense, and the dice told me it's okay. Penelope wakes up in a daze with Remy, and she starts to panic. Now, we've determined that Penelope is very talented in the arcane arts. She has this arcane talent within her, swelling up, but she doesn't know how to contain it yet, right? And this is like a panic moment for Penelope. Meanwhile, we have Burrow, our other frogkin, this monk-like froggish defector. He is now facing down his brother and the froggish ninja that have ambushed these boats. That's right. We determined in Burrow's backstory that he is also being pursued by his own family, and that is because Burrow has forsaken the ways of the great Toad King Krokokame, and he has left the frog marshes heading north to warn folks about this impending invasion. Now, my players probably expected that this is something that would have paid off much later in the campaign, but I like to get things going right away. I want my players to feel this sort of pressure, like this pressure cooker is starting to bubble up immediately at session 1 and 2 of the campaign. And that is because you should not wait, guys. When you have backstory payoff like this, I think it's great to start letting your players' backstories pay off immediately. Now, don't get me wrong, this is going to ripple throughout the rest of the campaign, and I still have plenty of surprises up my sleeve to bring out throughout our sessions as we continue through the next 2 months of playing Crown and Skull. But when you allow these moments to happen organically at the beginning, you not only signal to your players that you're paying attention and their story matters, but also that shit is going down right now, yo, and it's time to get engaged right now, all right? So, we have this oh shit moment because Burrow is already facing down, face to face with his brother. Now, Burrow's brother is much bigger and stronger than he remembers, and he's holding this red lacquered samurai sword that Burrow recognizes from his backstory. Now, in the past, Burrow has used this sword to slay many a foe, but he has foregone this life, and he has taken up this peaceful life with this new Shinto-esque cult-like religion that he's following and trying to spread across the North Holds. So his brother tosses this sword at his feet, points to him and yells, "Betrayer!" And this frog, his frog throat boils out, and he calls him a betrayer, and he challenges Burrow to pick up the sword. But Burrow has already established that he will not do that, and so he tells his brother, "I've put that life behind me. I'm not picking up the sword. We are not doing this right now." Meanwhile, Royce is panicking. He's on the shoreline and he's crawling through the rocks, through this bloody river water that is pooled up around him, and he sees these people that he knows and loves and cares about, these people that are protecting Penelope have been completely peppered with arrows, and Penelope's supposed father is now dead on the shore side, and we can hear Penelope start to panic. So, as this showdown is happening with the Frogkin, Royce is also crawling his way towards Penelope. Burrow's brother signals to the Frogkin to put their bows down, and they square off in this very epic Kill Bill-esque encounter where they challenge each other. So, as that's happening, Penelope opens up the palanquin and she comes tumbling out, and she comes face to face with her dead father. Now, in the game, Penelope is 8 years old, so you can only imagine the type of traumatic event that this would be to witness the death of your father in a very violent way at 8 years old. So, I, as the GM, knew this was coming, and I prepared for this moment. This is the first timer of our session. I have my players roll a d4, we go into phases. At the end of this timer, Penelope is going to go nuclear. She is going to have a Jean Grey Dark Phoenix moment, and she is going to essentially explode with arcane energy. I do not let my players know this. I just tell them to roll a timer, and I can tell that they think there's going to be some sort of like froggish reinforcements coming in, but I want this to be a surprise for everybody. And this is my way of pulling Penelope back into the narrative, because my fiance, who couldn't be there for session 1, is now here. So I want to bring her in to the campaign naturally as a player at the table now. So we roll a timer, we have our round set. Burrow's brother launches towards him in this very like Dragon Ball Z anime way and slams Burrow in the stomach, and he's immediately losing attrition. The way I set up this encounter is kind of like a Mega Man 10 moment, where I wanted my players to feel very strong. I wanted them to have access to all of their skills and equipment, and I wanted to show them how serious attrition is and how serious it is to start getting beat up. Because in Crown and Skull, every time you get hit, you're losing skills or you're losing equipment to attrition. And so, in these few rounds of combat, is flashing by very quick, but essentially Burrow is getting beat up by his brother, who has clearly gotten insanely powerful. And we've established this at the table. The way that he is moving, the speed and force in which he is beating the ever-loving crap out of Burrow is inhuman, frog-like. He has leveled up in some sort of dramatic way that Burrow cannot understand. And in the middle of this encounter, Burrow's brother says, "If you won't pick up your sword, if you won't fight me honorably like the Frogkin should, then screw you," basically. And he stomps on this sword. He shatters the red lacquered sheath that the sword is in and puts this massive indent in it. Now, we've determined in our world too that froggish steel, it's like adaptanium, right? It's like that fantasy metal that is unbreakable. So the fact that he has stomped on the sword and basically put a sandal-like dent into the sword signals as well that he is insanely powerful. And in just a few rounds of combat, he gets basically knocked out. He loses himself to attrition, and at that moment, Royce connects with Penelope, pulls Penelope into her arms. The froggish ninjas surround the party. The timer ends, and I narrate to everybody that Penelope throws her head back. She basically glows white and screams, and she basically explodes, and everything goes white. So we have this little cooldown moment, right? And my party is like, whoa, what the fuck just happened? Again, we have this reset. We wake up on the shoreline. The froggish warriors are gone. Burrow is still here. His sword is still here. Everybody is still here. But the bodies that were there on the river line that the frogs killed have been vaporized, essentially. Essentially, Penelope has gone nuclear, but somehow, some way, she's protected her friends. And I'm gonna be real with you guys. I have no idea exactly how this happened, but it doesn't really matter because we've already determined that Penelope is extremely gifted in the arcane arts, but she's only 8 years old. So she hasn't fully been able to control this either. And this also plays into the way that my fiance has built this character and her background and her narrative, right? So I use this basically as a narrative device to kind of like wipe the field clean, bring my fiance back into the game and to establish, holy shit, the Frogkin were coming for Penelope. There is some sort of arcane significance to this little girl. And now we have many factions coming for her, right? Not only do we have the Garish Gang that wants to save her just for the sake of bringing her on this crazy adventure, but we have this powerful Diamond Baron family coming for her, and now we have the Froggish Empire coming for her as well. So, the party takes a breather, okay? That is a mechanic in Crown and Skull. It's basically there to allow your party to rest when there is a moment of respite, but they cannot just take back all of their skills and equipment that they've lost to attrition. They can roll a d4 and regain that many skills or equipment. You can also use healing abilities or repair abilities at this time. I allow my players to use those skills or spells once per moment like this. Now, keep in mind, every GM is going to have their own way of interpreting rules and things at the table. So if you're confused about how these things work, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I'll definitely respond the best that I can. But just keep in mind that when you're playing Crown and Skull at your table, while it's important to honor the game as written, it's also important for you as a GM to deliver the experience that you and your players need. And it's okay to be loosey-goosey, right? So as the players are taking a breather, Royce and Penelope share this moment of reunion. Remy is there. They RP a little bit and basically establish that they don't know what happened, but Penelope went nuclear. Royce realizes that there's something very special, almost terrifyingly so, going on with Penelope. And Gilliman is just KO'd in the back. Now, Gilliman pushes a cart around with him where he keeps all of his blacksmithing gear. He has a little mini forge, he has hammers and other tools, and that's a big part of his character. They had loaded this crate onto the boat that they sent downriver. But when they hit this rock and then Penelope went nuclear, the crate got damaged and it's missing wheels. And the wheels are now nowhere to be found. So they know that they have to find wheels for this crate. And that is my new impetus for this session. How are we going to find wheels to repair Gilliman's crate so we can move forward with all of Gilliman's stuff? As the party is grappling with this, Burrow has this moment where he goes to the riverside, the sun is going down, and he goes into this Zen, Tai Chi-like moment. And now, as well, keep in mind that Burrow is a faith-based character, and Burrow's player, Baba, asks me, can I roll faith and pray to my god, this Shinto-like cult religion that he has, to see the path forward? Because meeting his brother and being faced with his brother and faced with his past and his destiny like this has rocked him to his faithful core. So he has this Tai Chi-like moment down by the river, and we roll faith, and because of his rolls and what's happening at the table, we determine that he needs to cast out his sword. So that's what he does. He takes his sword and he throws it into the river, and he continues on. But as he continues on this meditative path, We determine through another series of roles in narrative description that he can't stop thinking about this sword. He can't let it go. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees all of these people that have been slayed with his sword, and he can't focus on his meditation, and he feels like he's losing his way. He feels like he's losing his path with this newfound religion that he has, that he's trying to spread across the North Holds. And so, in an awesome moment of character development and roleplay, Burrow decides that he is going to dive in the river and use his faith skill to essentially help him find the sword. He pulls it back out of the river. Now it is damaged. The sheath has been shattered. Half of it is gone. The other half is still attached to the top of the hilt of the sword, but the blade itself has been stomped down and dented. So right now it's unusable, right? And Burrow kind of declares to himself and the party that he is going to carry this sword with him now. He's going to work with Gilliman to repair it, and he's going to use the sword for good and to right the wrongs that he had committed with this sword in the past. So we have this moment, they take a breather, and they decide that they need to figure out how to repair the cart, right? We kind of go over to the next day now, narratively speaking. Now, the party decides that they are going to leave Gilliman behind at camp with the cart. Mostly, I think the motivation here was because they knew Peter wasn't here to control Gilliman, so they decided it would be better to leave him there. And they even say that they take a moment to write a little note and place it on his chest that says, "If you wake up, we're looking for a way to repair your cart. We'll be back. Don't worry." I knew that basically they were going to have to find a way to repair this cart, right? And another huge feature of Crown and Skull is the hex rolls. Crown and Skull encourages you to use these hex rolls, which is a 2d10 roll. One d10 determines the location, and the other d10 determines the encounter that happens at the location. This can be kind of nerve-wracking for GMs to completely randomly generate a location and an encounter on the spot. So because I'm still dipping my toes into the waters of Crown and Skull, I made this roll ahead of time and kind of prepped ahead of time. So knowing the area that they're in, I made this 2d10 hex roll, and I rolled up ideal terrain, and then the environmental event was something that would occur often here. Taking that into consideration, it is ideal terrain. We are in the mountains where there are coal mines all over the place, diamond mines all over the place. So ideal terrain means to me that it is a diamond mine. And then the environmental effect is something that occurs often. What often occurs in a diamond mine, right? A diamond mining operation. So now in my head, my gears are turning, and I know that there are miners here. But Penelope went nuclear, right? And when she went nuclear, she caused this avalanche. So as the players come out of their camp and they start searching for a way to repair this cart, they come across this snowy avalanche that has come down across the mountainside and covered this entire region. And they find these cart tracks that are still kind of cutting through the snow and the avalanche here. And there are 3 dwarves that are stuck in these snowdrifts. So the Garish Gang minus Gilliman find this snowdrift, they find this abandoned minecart, and they run into these 3 dwarves. But there are these snow rats here, okay? Now, snow rats are a creature that I homebrewed up on my own in the rule system of Crown and Skull. I'm not going to get into it right now because we're going to be here all day, but I am planning on making a video about how you can create your own monsters in Crown and Skull. And the process is very intuitive. All of that to say, as the Garish Gang comes across this encounter, we roll timer dice and the ice rats attack. So now, the Garish Gang has to find a way to navigate through this snowdrift avalanche, fighting off these snow rats and saving these dwarves. As they do so, they encounter the dwarves and they learn a few things from them. Most noticeably, the dwarves let the party know as they're fighting off and thwarting these ice rats and pushing this cart through this map, that rumor has it that Lady Wachter from Rivergate is selling off her estate to the Barringtons, and that is Penelope's family. So that is showing to my party that what their party is doing, what is happening to their party, is also affecting the rest of the world, and people know about this. They also drop some knowledge that they're aware that the Barringtons have this young princess who's supposed to be taking on this role. And obviously we know that the princess has gone missing now and the party is in possession of her. So again, I'm reinforcing to my players that people are looking for Penelope. They also tell the players that they have been harassed by Frogkin ninjas more recently, picking them off as they're trying to go through these mining operations, and so this is their final job before they go home. And home to these dwarves is the mountain city area of Runehammer. And Runehammer is ruled by King Throm. Because of these froggish attacks, King Throm has called for all stout folk who are dwarves in this world to come home and prepare for an imminent attack and defend their ancient holy grounds of Runehammer. And finally, through conversation and roleplay, we also determine with my party that Bramford, which is a city area south of Rivergate, where they are right now in the hex map, is known as a safe haven of all walks of life and faith. And this signals to Burrow that this is the place that they should go. Because Burrow is a man of faith, he is a man of religious following, and so he feels like that is an ideal safe haven for the party to follow. But as all of this is happening, my players are pushing this minecart through this avalanche and trying to save these dwarves, throwing them in the cart while they're fighting off these ice rats that have these big icicle teeth. They're gnashing their teeth, they're whipping their tail back and forth, shooting icicles across the map. This is all going down in phases, and they're pushing this minecart through these tracks, and it takes a phase of an action for your phase to move the minecart. So my players are using phases and basically determining who's going to sacrifice their turn this phase, who's going to use their phase to push the minecart forward as the rest of the party fights off these ice rats. We also determine through all of this that the dwarves are a little suspect of the Frogkin, right? And as they push the minecart across this bridge, I have determined as a GM that if they push this minecart across this bridge, they're going to trigger a second avalanche, because Penelope has gone nuclear and this blast that exploded out of her has completely destabilized the area around them. Now, at this point, guys, I'm sweating as a GM because I know that they've left Gilliman behind at camp. And if they trigger another avalanche, Gilliman is going to get completely covered in this avalanche. He's going to get wiped out. There is no way that he can survive something like that, right? You can't even roll dice to determine something that grave. If you get stuck in an avalanche, you're going to die. And this is a great lesson because I was expecting my players to take the minecart, use tools and skill checks to pull off the wheels, go back and fix Gilliman's cart, throw him in the cart and pull him around to keep him with them. But as I'm sure you guys know as GMs, what you expect to happen never actually happens. And I should have known better. But anyway, they push the minecart across the bridge here. I think to myself, oh shit, here we go. I have them roll another timer. The timer runs out. They save one of the dwarves, and his name is Toki, and he is the youngest dwarf in this group of miners. They get him across the bridge, but the avalanche is coming. The other two dwarves are stuck behind in the snowdrifts. These are the dwarves that have expressed dissent and distrust in the Frogkin and have really kind of lore dropped to my party what's going on with King Throm calling the stout folk back and preparing for war. The avalanche is coming. We get Toki across the bridge. At this point, the party realizes what's happened. I have let them know, yo, if you guys don't find a way to save Gilliman, he is kaput. There is no way that this avalanche is going to sweep him away and he's going to make it out alive. I shared this omnipotent information with my party because, one, I think it's very important to have clear communication with your party. I think it's okay to let them know what you're thinking as a GM sometimes, because I want my players to, one, trust me, but I also want my players to trust the dice, and I want my players to trust the narrative. And I want all of us at the table to respect what is happening in this narrative through dice rolls. So my players realize that they screwed up. Gilliman is screwed, and these two old dwarves basically embrace each other as they see this avalanche coming towards them. And one of the dwarves, old Willie, says to Nate, the one dwarf that has expressed the most distrust and dislike towards the Frogkin, and he says, see, I told you Frogkin are good people. And as he says that, you could hear a pin drop at my table. The avalanche comes and sweeps them away. And we see them just completely disappear into the avalanche. And they know as well that Gilliman is down there by the riverside and he is taken away. Now, this was a tough moment for everybody at the table because I think they kind of felt in a way like they got screwed over because they decided to let Gilliman stay at camp thinking like, oh, the player's not here, so whatever, he's just not participating. But I want my players to know that this is all real in the world of the North Holds, and I can't let their actions slide. I can't say, oh well, you know, the avalanche doesn't affect Gilliman because he's not here, it's fine. No, they made their decisions. They proved to these dwarves that the Frogkin can be good, that the Frog can save them, and that there is a place for these guys to work together in harmony in the North Holds, and this kind of tragic ending. But beyond that, that is where we ended session 2. Now, like I said just before, I think it's really important to have clear, open conversations and dialogue with your players. And so, as we were packing up at the end of session 2, I was playing some kind of sadder music just to go with the vibes, and I could tell that all of my party were really bummed out. They felt like they failed. They felt like they failed Gilliman, and I could tell that they were really upset. And we all felt kind of bad because when Peter gets back, we're gonna have to tell Peter that his character died in session 2 when he wasn't around because of kind of a silly mishap. And so guys, it just wasn't sitting right with me, and I was sitting there looking at my notes, writing down notes to get ready for the next session, and I thought to myself, you know what? Crown and Skull is all about the dice rolls. Crown and Skull is all about letting the dice do the talking for you. So I said to myself, I will take the most trusted and revered dice of all, the D20, and I will let the D20 tell me what happens to Gilliman. Now, Crown and Skull is a roll under system. So technically in Crown and Skull, when it comes to skill checks at least, a natural 1 is what you want to see to get a critical success. But as a purist and as someone who loves a good nat 20 every once in a while, I told myself, if I roll a natural 20, that means that Gilliman miraculously survived this snowfall, this avalanche, and he's gonna make it out alive. I started shaking my die in my hand. Now my fiance Tanya is sitting next to me and she's packing up and she's looking at my face. I'm all bummed out. I rolled a d20 and guys, I shit you not, it was a nat 20. I rolled a 20, it was sitting there on my notebook. My face dropped like a literal jaw drop moment. My fiance looked at me and said, what is it? Now in this moment, I kind of choked. In retrospect, I feel like I should have told my players what I was doing, what I was rolling. So we could have shared in that natural 20 moment together. But I told my fiance nothing, I was just seeing something. But that determined to me that Gilliman is alive. Gilliman made it out alive and he's gonna be okay. And that is how we ended session 2 of the Garish Gang's adventures in the North Hold. Woo. Okay, it's only gonna get crazier from there, guys. In session 3, I have a big mishap and it was a big learning experience for me. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. We're gonna talk about hex rolls. We're gonna talk about what happens when you make mistakes as a GM at the table. And we're gonna talk about how you can take those mistakes and use them to your advantage to not only gain trust with your players, but also continue to push the story forward in amazing ways. So that's what you guys can look forward to episode 3 of the Crown and Skull campaign reports. And until next time, venture forth, y'all.